Hey y'all, welcome back to Ray of All Trades. I'm working on an Echo CS370 chainsaw. I need it to be a backup saw for somebody, and a decent looking little saw, just about the right size for him to store it inside his Jeep for off-roading. First thing I'm going to do is get rid of any sort of gas that might have been in this thing. Hopefully none. Alright. So I think I saw a couple of drops of varnish come out of there. Smelled terrible. Before I fill it up with gasoline, let's just quickly go through it and verify what else is going on with this saw. Hopefully it just needs some fresh fuel. Maybe some fuel lines, something like that. Air filter looks actually really clean. Starter rope actually felt really good. It's got a spring-loaded assist on it. So, and the motor felt pretty decent. I haven't pulled the muffler yet to see the shape of the piston, but let's just see what we're working with here. Because it's really the perfect size for what he needs. So if it does need a motor, I might end up putting a piston and cylinder in it if I have to. And honestly, that last Echo that I worked on surprised the heck out of me how well it ran. If that's a sign of what's to come, thinking that maybe we would actually rebuild this thing and it would be usable, nice little saw. So air filter looked good. Believe it or not, the primer bulb actually still works. I can actually hear it pushing fuel. That's the NGK plug that's inside it. Love NGKs. Normal rich saw, just like I set them. I like them to be a little bit on the rich side. They run a little cooler. Well, that sounds good. Check for spark. Can you guys see? Switch should be on. Pretty blue spark. That shuts it off. Man, that would be so nice if all I have to do is add some gas to this thing. The fuel lines aren't rigid like I would have expected them to be. You know, an old fuel line, I really expected bad condition, and this thing's, so far I'm liking what I'm seeing. So I really want this saw to run on 40-to-1 canned gas, only because I have some, and what he's planning on using it for, some canned gas would be ideal. All right, if I can make this thing run nicely on 40-to-1, then we might be able to have something that he can store inside a case and just leave it inside the vehicle. Yeah, it seems to prime up. On button. Oh, it does have a choke. Nice. I already heard it kick over once. All right, so I brought it outside. You saw me fill it up with fuel. I put some oil in and I sharpened the chain and brought it outside. I thought maybe I was done with it, and I can't get the carburetor to tune. It's not responding. It also has these plastic caps on it that are preventing me from adjusting it properly. So I'd like to get into the carburetor and see if it's just gummed up or something else going on. I tried running it on its side, it didn't change. I tried holding it up, it didn't change. Like I said, it starts, it runs, spins the chain, it revs up to about the right RPMs, so the high jet looks like it's set pretty well. But I can't get any adjustment out of the low jet, and the reason I was trying to adjust the low jet is because it wasn't idling quite right. And something tells me if I put some 50-to-1 in here, it probably would run differently. But again, I'm trying to set this thing up to run on 40-to-1 if I can. Yes, they do sell 50-to-1 pre-mixed in a can. I just happen to have the 40-to-1, and I'd like to set it up as just a package deal. So, and I'm kind of a firm believer that if carburetor can't take an adjustment, it really needs attention rather than just saying, okay, we'll just run this type of fuel. Let's pull off my 2 stop wires. That's kind of what I expected. All right, so just dirty inside. Here's my impulse line out the top. Let's see, we'll leave the primer hooked up so that I can remember which line went where. And then I have a short line coming from the primer that goes to the bottom of the carburetor. And then the top of the carburetor is going back into the tank, and that should be the return. And that's pretty normal. Well, I really expected that I was going to start spitting fuel when I did that. Walbro carb. Likely never been off of there. Gaskets are in pretty good shape. The reed valves have like indentations where they were sucked into the ports. So it's probably time to change those. I do have some, see this red stuff that's on this screen? So that's that varnish I was talking about that came out of the tank. So there was some dirt in there. I honestly expected that the fuel pump diaphragm was going to be in bad shape, but it really isn't. Man. Okay, what do we got here? Oh yeah, it's time. I don't know if y'all can hear that on camera or not. I've definitely seen worse, but this one definitely has some rigidity to it. And then here's my limiting caps that I was talking about. I really couldn't get any kind of adjustment out of them, and I can't get it more than 1/8 of a turn. Let's get the limiting caps out. All right, so I'm just gonna take a coarse screw, gently put it in there. Sometimes you can just drive it in and it'll pull that plastic out. But I'm gonna try to pry it out this way. Looks like it's trying to take the whole body out with it. The whole limiting body. Yeah, there we go. That would have been the choke side. That's the choke side, and this is the throttle side, in which the throttle side is going to have the impulse side. The one closest to the motor is going to be the low screw. The one furthest out is going to be the high screw. So let's see on the low screw what we have. Half. One. About 1 and maybe 1/8. On the high screw, half, 1, 1 1/2, 2, 2 1/2, 3, 3 1/2, 4, for about 4 turns. All right, something wasn't quite right there. So either somebody messed with the limiting caps before and took them off, and I was just feeling the resistance, or somebody took them off, adjusted this thing kind of to a crazy mixture, and then put it back in. This screwdriver doesn't fit that well either. My numbers were good, but what I'm trying to do is not have to press so hard to pull it out of there. So I expected that high jet and the low jet to both be somewhere around 1 turn each. And the low jet was close. Those two look identical. All right, in the ultrasonic cleaner, this thing goes. I'm just looking at all the passages after pulling it out of the ultrasonic cleaner, making sure that everything I can see feels clear. There's little drillings that are inside the carburetor that come through where this Welch plug is, right there. I did not pull out that Welch plug, but I can pass air through it easily. If you wanted to pull out that Welch plug, you literally just take a punch and gingerly take this out of here and then put a new Welch plug in from the kit, and then tap it back in place, and then put a little bit of nail polish is supposed to hold it in place. Ideally, I mean, this thing, like I said, it ran, it just, like it wouldn't respond to anything I was doing with the carburetor. And those mixture screws being that far off, I have a feeling that that probably had something to do with it. Anyway, she's pretty clean. I found another carb kit that matched up to this old carb kit. Let's put a fuel screen in there first, brand new. All right. Put our new fuel pump diaphragm and valves, is what these are, on there. Make sure all of that lines up and that the valves are actually covering a hole that tells you that you've got the right gasket. And then on this side, generally I like reusing the old metering lever and spring and everything else. And I am going to definitely use the spring, because if you notice, the one that came with the kit, I'll put it in the front. They're really close, but they're not the same. So we're going to take that one, the brand new one from the kit, out, or I will use the new needle, and I will reuse the new metering lever and a new metering lever pivot arm. A lot of times I won't reuse those. I won't use the new ones. I'll just use the old ones. But let's go ahead and do it on this one, just because. So I'll put the spring in here. I saw a guy, he had a plate that it was basically an L bracket with a couple of studs coming off of it that he could mount the carburetor onto. I will be making one of those. That looked awesome. I don't know if that's a factory tool or whatever, but I am definitely going to be making one of those. So put the arm into the metering lever, put the needle onto it, and then attempt to put it all down in there in one fell swoop. Well, it didn't work, so my next step is I usually try to capture the spring on the back side and then push the fork down onto the metering lever, see if I can catch it that way. And sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. I have to restart all over. All right, let's make sure that we are sitting right. Or the needle is in place, the fork is around it. When I push down on the lever, it does move. Let me tighten this down, and I guarantee that I need to do some adjusting. Which is the reason why a lot of times I'll reuse that, because it's already set. So this carburetor is a WT carburetor, stamped right there on the side. So you use a gauge, and you find the WT on the gauge. Let's see, WT is this one right here in the middle. So meaning that these two go on the body, this right here should just barely touch that arm. Okay, that's moving, it's hitting the spring properly. And I want to find that adjustment. And if you can you see, maybe you can, maybe you can't. I need that basically to line up. And you can see I'm way off. So the way you adjust that is you bend that tab up, and then it should just barely touch once it's there. And it's not, so a little bit more. If you go too far, you basically just hold the needle down and bend in the downward position. There we go. I hope that's coming out. There we go. All right, so that one's now adjusted. Critical, because that's how much fuel is going to be dumped in each time. This metering diaphragm right here, every time it pushes down, that's how much fuel is allowed to go in to the motor at a time. So it is a critical adjustment. So on this side, the gasket goes first, then your metering diaphragm, then the plate that I took off earlier, And just snug those up. Then we have our 2 mixture screws. These look identical. Sometimes they are different threads, thread pitch and thicknesses, so one will go and one won't. So just gently screw these in until it stops. It's very important that you don't use force when you're driving it all the way to the bottom. So the bottom of that needle had a really fine point on it. If you drive it down in there really tight, it can break off inside there. And if you break it off inside there, you're not going to get it out. Okay, that basically touched the bottom. You notice I didn't tighten it up. I just gave it a little bit of downwards force and used my fingers to see if it would move at all. I'm having to push a lot harder because these screws, the head on these screws aren't a great fit for the screwdriver. They're just kind of a V as opposed to being like a flathead screw. So I'm just being extremely gentle turning it. Okay, oh, no, a little bit more. Okay, that's it. All right, so let's do a turnout on both of them. Let's see, that's a half. And 1. And then in this one, half. And then 1. All right, we're going to try that to start off with. That choke goes to the outside edge. It's going to go on there just like that. So let's get the fuel lines on. It went to the bottom. Like I said, that comes from the primer, goes to the bottom of the carburetor. And then there was another line that comes up to the side of the carburetor that returns to the tank. That's going to be a return line. And then the other side of the primer bulb connects down to your filter down inside the carburetor. Let's reroute those. Just so that they fall into place easier. The throttle rod goes between these two right here, and then the lever should be connecting up inside there. You should be able to move freely. And then this right here. To get those started and make sure that the gasket didn't fall out the way anywhere. Fuel lines aren't getting pinched. Whoops. Came off the carburetor. That means I got to take it back apart because this one fuel line came off of the carburetor. Okay, well, let's go ahead and pull it off of the primer so that as we're messing with it, we can get it to return back easier. And I'm going to pull it around that direction like that. And get my impulse line put back on. Let's hook the throttle. And I need to hook up my fuel line that I had here, and I also need to hook up my choke. So if the choke's down here, like that, I want this primer line to be inside of it. So let's hook that up. Primer line on the inside. That should keep it from rubbing, and should be able to hook up this primer line now with a pair of hemostats. I think that's going to be my best bet. I just had to grab that line and just feed it right back onto the end of there. And if you notice, my throttle came out of that little edge again. So let's put that back in. All right, something kind of like that. All right, make sure nothing is rubbing on any of the lines. It all looks like it's free. Let me go ahead and get the handle put on here real quick. Let's see, that spring appears to be down like that for my deadman switch. And if that's hooked up correctly, I shouldn't be able to move the throttle unless I push this down. Now I can move the throttle and it should return back up. So that's how you know that that's hooked up correctly. Let's get the kill switch hooked back up. This little grommet goes inside that plastic area there. And then my two wires get hooked up. And that's my kill switch. If I don't have this hooked up, it will not stop the saw. It won't prevent it from starting, but it won't stop it either. Because all it's doing is connecting part of the coil to ground through this switch right here. All right, let's see. That sounds good. Tell you what I want to do before I get too far. Choke still works. Before I get too far, let's go and put fuel back in this thing and make sure that it still primes up like it's supposed to and nothing leaks. I'll try not to make a mess again. Gas isn't running out everywhere. That's good. Let's see if we can prime it up. I don't know if y'all noticed, but the primer just died on me. When I was trying to prime it up, gasoline started coming out of here, and now I'm seeing a crack on this. So all I'm going to do is pop that primer out of there. So there's two tabs on it. Just take those two tabs, and you're going to bend them in, pull it out, and then pop a new primer in there. All right, let's hook up those two. And before I snap it in and make sure that I've got them setting properly, let's see if it primes up now. And there's my fuel. That's all it took. So these primer bulbs, literally, I mean, you can see the crack and maybe you can see the wetness on it, but yep, there's the hole right there. Let's talk a minute about the mixture screws and why the problem that we just found could have been the reason for them to adjust that wide open screw so fat. I think it's called stoic mixture. So anyway, the chainsaw wants 14.7 parts of air to 1 part of gasoline for a correct mixture. So if you've got a crack here and you're ingesting air into the system, air is actually being pulled into that carburetor, and I mean, it'll leak out, but basically you're getting more air in, which means that you need more fuel to compensate to try to make it run properly. So they would be opening up the mixture screw more than a turn to allow more fuel in to compensate for the extra air that was coming in. I'm not sure how they got past just turning the heck out of this thing. I do see a crack on the one that I didn't pull, so it's possible they just found a way to just get in there and, you know, keep cranking on it. So it is entirely possible that that was the original problem. I'm going to give this thing a try to fire it up and see if I can get it to tune in. It's dark outside, so very likely you're not going to see much, and if I can't get it, then we will reconvene when it's daylight. Let's give it a try though. All right, it's on the on position. It's primed up. Give it some choke. Let's take the choke off. Give it fast idle. Let's give it some choke so that we can determine if we just don't have enough fuel. And that is the case. So we're messing with the low jet right now. Open that up a little bit. So I had to take the choke off to make it run. Yeah, we're gonna wait till daylight so I can see and you guys can see. All right, y'all, I set the carburetor back to 1.5 turns on low, 1.5 turns on high, because it wasn't running very well on 1 turn each. So I'm gonna set it at 1.5 and see how she runs, and then I'm going to use the tachometer. It says that the maximum power out of this thing occurs about 9,000 RPMs, and the no load max RPM is supposed to be 13.5. So what you'll do, you'll see me adjust the low speed screw for about the fastest idle, and I also want a quick throttle response, so it might be just a little bit on the rich side of fastest idle. And then on the high speed screw, that's actually where you're going to be setting your maximum RPMs. So I'm going to try to adjust that for about 13.5, maybe a little bit on the lower side of 13.5. So let's see if I can get that running right. Yeah, I think that'll do it. A little bit of hesitation when it was revving up, so it might be a little bit on the rich side. So I'll get it in some wood, do some final test cuts, but I think we got this one done. CS370. Hope y'all got something out of the video. Really appreciate you hanging out, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.